Hello YouTube, here's some pictures of my solo installation of my 502 with a beefed up M22 transmission in my 1967 Camaro.
Welcome to Rick's Garage, where stuff gets done.
One of the first things I did is test fit the large primary tube headers onto the engine. There's not a lot of room in the engine bay and I wanted to make sure these fit well before I drop the engine in. Here I've got the engine lowered onto a rolling engine storage stand, and you can see the tilting hoist I've got bolted to the top of the engine, getting ready now to put the transmission on. I like using center force clutches on the street machines I've built over the years. This is the dual action clutch, and I'm getting ready to put it on the engine. Here I've got the clutch, the pressure plate, and the pilot tool installed, getting ready to line up the transmission. I used a beefed up M22 transmission from a company called Auto Gear. You can see the strengthening plate about halfway down the length of the transmission. Here I've got a Lakewood bell housing and the clutch fork and pilot bearing installed on the transmission. I've also got the transmission assembly on a floor jack to make it easier to roll up to the engine. Lining up the splines on the transmission input shaft is really tricky, so I put 6-inch bolts on the back of the engine to hold the assembly and give me a little help in lining it all up. Here's the 502, the bell housing, clutch, and transmission all bolted tight and ready to be picked up off the ground and lowered into the engine bay. If you look close, you can see the large primary tube headers. They're ceramic coated. I didn't want to scratch them, and I've got them pre-staged in the engine, ready for the engine to be dropped between them. Here's the full 502 powertrain assembly off the ground and getting ready to carefully move it over the engine bay in the 1967 Camaro. The engine is over the engine bay and I've got the transmission pointed down, getting ready to lower it carefully into the tunnel and between those pre-staged headers. Here the engine's lowered just over the engine mounts and starting to line it between the pre-staged headers. Once I got it close, I pulled the headers up to the heads and ran in all the header bolts to make sure everything looked good, and then I'm ready to lower it on the mounts as the next step. After about 4 hours of working by myself, I've got the engine fully installed. It's bolted onto the engine mounts, the headers are fully snugged up, and I'm ready to run fuel lines, coolant lines, put the radiator in, and finish up the rest of the installation.